Hello guys, and welcome to a Should I Buy Last Epoch video. I have been playing Last Epoch since pretty early on in its development. I think around 4 years ago, they reached out to me asking if I wanted to try new ARPG that they were working on, which was trying to, as they say in their most recent launch video, they're trying to essentially make their take on the next-gen ARPG to really celebrate the genre, which was very reminiscent of a message I received 11 years ago from Chris Wilson about another ARPG that in a similar fashion wanted to be one of the great ARPGs, which was Path of Exile. So we're off to a good start, and I'm just gonna go over, as I have over here on the side, my thoughts on different systems, what they've managed to do with those, and how the game fares so far, and how I think the game will fare over time to justify whether or not you should buy the game. And if you just want to know whether or not I'm gonna tell you to pull the trigger or not, if you are at all an ARPG enjoyer, I would say yes. If you like building characters, slaying some monsters, if that's like your go-to, by all means fire away. If you're just here for an amazing story, we'll see about that. Okay, right. Start off, campaign. So we're starting off with one of the weaker parts of the game. That's not to say I don't appreciate their ideas, but making a campaign, I mean, and then a compelling story, it's a tall order. I have played this game 400 to 500 hours ish, probably more, maybe 500 to 600 hours, honestly, and I still don't know what's going on. There is some corruption going on in the world of Eterra, which they're trying to prevent. There's a lot of different timelines. Like initially I was keen on the idea of, oh, we're gonna be jumping back and forth in time, but it ends up being very confusing, and you never really know where you are and why you're there. You're like back in the Stone Age, in the future everything's corrupt. It gets kind of weird. It's hard to really remember any of the characters and what their significance is. I think if you really pay attention, there's probably a good story there. There's a lot of elements to it, but it definitely does not strike like a major chord with me. It is a passable experience. Voice acting is so-so. It gets a little funny at times even. But yeah, the campaign overall feels like a bit of a mess. I do not believe they've even finished it for the full game. I think it's still undone, which is also a bit weird. You don't get like a conclusion. I don't know. The fact that I don't even know is kind of weird, because like you can also stop the campaign and just go to the end game before you even finish it. So it's a bit of a departure from other games there, which is actually something I can recommend. Is that after, don't really want to spoil it. Essentially, once you fill up your passives and your idle slots, you can just go to endgame. It's around level 50. There are some characters like Gaspar and some other ones. The bosses are okay. I don't know. It's not like, it's pretty mid, I would say. It's passable. You get to develop your character. It's difficult. The campaign is pretty difficult, I would say. At least on the first go round. Is it more difficult than PoE? I don't know. Probably not. Probably similar at times. It's like some things are really dangerous. Other things are really easy. It is what it is. Okay, items. This is where it starts getting really good. Uniques they're starting to get really good at this point. Their design is getting better and better around uniques. In the beginning, they were very mid. I remember that when I first saw their uniques. But they've definitely gotten better and better and better. And I definitely see myself using 1 or 2 uniques on like every build. I think there's a good balance between uniques and, do we just call them rares? I think we do. Exalted items. It's like 4 or 5 stat items, essentially, where you can decide what you get on there. There is one other type of item, which is set items, which are largely something you can ignore. But they do enable the occasional specific build around their thing. Sometimes they can be, they're pretty well statted, so they can be a good slot in early on. But sets are always difficult and almost impossible to balance, so it's good that they're not too private. Like they're not too powerful, except for like some edge cases, which is probably how it should be. and sometimes you can use one of their effects. We all want sets to be great, but they're just never that great in ARPGs, so uniques is the big thing here. Now, for uniques, they also have something called LP. So LP is something called legendary potential. Now, depending on some internal number, there will be a certain chance that LP rolls on an item. The more common items are generally also easier, but this is not, it's tailored to every specific item, are generally speaking easier to obtain LP on. So the more powerful, the more rare, the harder it is to get. So what is LP? So LP is essentially, it rolls from 1 to 4, which means that, and as you could hear earlier, normal crafted items or rare items, they roll up to 4 stats. Now, there is a dungeon that has a crafting tool at the end, which allows you to kill the boss. And if you, the highest level uniques require you to do the highest level boss, but it can allow you to essentially merge two together. Your unique item with LP on it and your exalted item. So the exalted items are essentially the highest tier of the affixes in the game. They go 6 and 7. Those are the 2 exalted ones. You can't craft them on your own. They have to naturally drop. And then on that, I do believe you can get more than 1 exalted item, but that's pretty rare. But yeah, things scale up in the end game. And then depending on how many LP you have, it'll randomly take that amount from the item. So if you have 4 LP, it takes randomly 4 affixes, but the item can only have 4, so you get all 4. If it's only 1 LP, you can get one of the 4 affixes you have on your item, and so it's a bit of a gamble. So especially for the high tier unique, like the very rare ones where you only have 1, maybe 2 if you're really lucky on some of the ones, it's a bit of a gamble. So you want to have 4 good ones you can hit, or just the one that you absolutely need to hit. But it's good. It allows for some really cool interactions with uniques, and because the more common ones have more LP generally, that means that you can, even the common ones that are not as powerful can become really powerful because they can spawn with way more LP. So that's a cool system. It makes you want to farm these things and to make that one unique with lots of LP and combining and smashing together. It's like recombination and PO. It's really fun to aim towards and as a goal, as an aspiration. Now to the other aspect that is the not uniques, which is the stuff you can craft and you can make. They have a really good mod pool. There's lots of different things you can get. There is enough tension between the mods that are generally pretty powerful to where it's hard to really know what mod you should get. There's a lot of mods you want, which is how you want a game to be. You have four mods, and you probably want 8 different mods on every item, right? So you have to choose. But at the end of the day, you are going to essentially always end up with the mod you want, which is both an upside and a downside, because it can kind of end your crafting journey a little early. Yes, you can upgrade them to the higher tier mods and get the exalted items that are drop only, and then you have to craft on that. It's a good crafting system. Every affix on an item is also a shard, and then you can obtain those shards, and those shards are then applied on the item. And then every item has a certain amount of crafting potential. And that crafting potential, each time you craft on it, lowers until it hits 0. And it's a randomized amount that it loses on each turn. So it'll be something from 1 to 20. And then let's say your crafting potential is like 80 or 70 or 60. I don't know, whatever. But then it means that in 4 crafts, your item could just be done on like 25 crafts. Like 25 is like iterations on the item, and so there's a lot there to like, oh shit, I got lucky this time. So a good amount of randomness on that. So itemization, I would say really good uniques, good crafting, good affix sets, good affix pools. They're adding more types of items as well. There's the weaver items, which I haven't really dealt with much. They seem good. Then there's it's sort of like an essence one that spawns with a fractured mod. There's some crafting materials that allow you to interact. So I think this is where this is the part where it reminds you of PoE a bit, where you can like kind of annul, exalt, and you can like lock, not the same. You can kind of fracture an item, which puts it outside the stat pool, so you can actually get 5 affixes an item. Good system, yeah, very fun. I would say not perfect, but very good. If you want to compare it to other games in terms of quality of crafting, I would say PoE is the one you compare it to. This is the sign of a good ARPG, where like they've really managed to design what they think is a cool system, right? It's unique, it fits the game, it's very good. Endgame. Here, it's both good and bad. Now, a lot of people will praise it. Other people, like me, will find it quite monotonous. Yes, we have the monos here. So the monos are monoliths, which is the first thing you hit around level 50. Monoliths are, you go from like, it's like you go from island to island. All these different islands will have a different type of layout. They will have a different type of style, different type of monsters inhabiting them, right? You will have the things that are mostly like fizz and fire and cold and lightning and necrotic and all these different areas, different fields, which also have an opportunity to drop you different types. So you can kind of target farm here. Mods that would roll on the monolith nodes themselves used to be very oppressive. It was something like 100, 200% increased damage from an element, then double damage done by monsters, and you can't deal crits to them, and they have 80% more life, and it was something ridiculous. And the way it works is that every time you do a different node on in a mono, that node's mods persist for X amount of time, from ranging from 3 to 6. So if you hit those 6 ones with a really bad mod and you stacked it, it was pretty bad. Now, since then, revised this, and now the nodes are now way more manageable. And they are putting the power onto the level of the monsters and the corruption that you add. And the corruption is something you add at end game. Is the further step into end game. After you do the first set of monoliths, you do go into something called empowered monoliths, where everything gets corrupted and there's a new end game boss in there, which is pretty cool. I do like that one. And then it scales up with that. Now, it kind of scales like Dell, which is both good and bad. I think it gets kind of weird because when you have this kind of scaling and it goes up to like, because it goes up to like 500% more damage, more life, those kind of numbers. Very stat petty. It definitely emphasizes the good and the bad builds, which has the potential of making things feel very like meta defined, especially if people start, like with YouTube and everything these days, people will start really obsessing over what level can your build do, rather than what does your build do and how did you make it. That's the downside. The good thing that they do have though is that the bosses don't really change from early level to late level, right? So the bosses you have on your empowered ones with no corruption are the same as they are with high corruption. It's just the power level increases. And the same thing can be said about the dungeons. It also means that if you've seen it, you've seen it. The aspirations get smaller, that are like kind of awe of seeing something new kind of diminishes a bit there. But it's an okay system. So you have to reset these to essentially do the boss again, and it becomes a rush the end of the node, finish it, ignore as many monsters as you can. There is like an X amount you have to kill, but it's more like a, oh, I have to kill this amount to unlock the node to generate the energy on the mono system to get to the next boss. And it's like, oh, I have to run 100 of these and then I can get to the, or like 50, and then I get to the next boss. And if you're just boss farming, it's like you're constantly running if to compare it like Exarch, but worse, right? Every time you want to do an Exarch, you can do once of those X amount of time, but you also want to have it really hard because you want to run the high corruption, and then they start taking longer because the higher corruption you have, the higher chance of LP and the better drops and all that. So it gets like, it can get pretty tedious where you feel like you're just grinding, and you're doing it to just unlock that one thing you want and everything else kind of doesn't matter. However, it does work well as a, I just want to play my character and slay some stuff, and that's fun. So I would say their endgame currently, in my opinion, and this will, people will have all sorts of opinion on this. Some people love it, some people don't love it. I think there's work to be done here. I think it's one of their more undercooked system, right? The end of the campaign and their endgame it's a bit undercooked, but there's good variety there. They're adding a lot of dungeons that have different incentives of why you want to do them, for different vendors, ways to spend your, I think, gold and ways to add LP, and ways to farm exalted items. Plus, they're adding in their new faction, or I should say this, the faction system. Factions. The factions look really good. Yes, the faction system is there is going to be a trade faction and an SSF faction, essentially, where you just boost what you want to find, and the other one is essentially I can trade with others. They both look really good. It's a very unique spin on how you want to kind of augment an endgame system through either trade or through playing on your own. I think for both systems, there is a way to circumvent this if you're just playing with friends, to also trade items and accumulate items, which is there are like some tokens you can obtain that allow you to link to your friends and then grant them some of the items you find if they're not currently with you as you're grinding through. So that's good. Right, so a lot of what this comes down to is the loop, right? It's like, how do I feel about just grinding and playing and playing and playing and keep playing and all that? And it can get a little bit... I think if you're just playing one character, it feels good. But if you play multiple characters, it feels less good. But they're addressing this somewhat again. I'm not sure if it's going to be enough. But like when you start out a new character, you have to go through this whole process again every time. And if you want to play different masteries, so the classes have like sub masteries, like 3 of them each, so you have like 12 total, and you always get one of them. You have to make a new character to get a new mastery. And there's 12 of them, and you really want to play all of them because they're all very fun. But then you have to go through the end game again, and you have to set up your monos again, and it's like, but they have made it easier if your power level is high enough to start essentially playing through that faster. But I think more work needs to be done here. So this is kind of where I would look at the game and being like, I'm looking forward to the development on this as the game goes beyond release. Character levels is also, I think you level up a bit too fast in the game, and it feels a little bit weird, like the speed at which you level. It's sometimes it goes fast and then you're really slow and then you're fast again, which is like both good and bad. I mean, other RPGs, it's a hard thing to balance. They get it okay. They're okay. It's okay. It's better than most, but not perfect. Moving on. Sounds. Oof. This has been a real low point for me for quite a while. Combat sounds feeling like not very impactful. Music feeling very monotone. I like playing games sometimes just with music. Now there is a star here because they've just introduced, I think, 35 areas with new music. So this might be a non-issue come release. Haven't heard it yet. Haven't tried it yet. I'm hoping that it's good, but there's a lot to cover. There's a lot to catch up to here, because it was definitely one of the weak points. Combat as well. There, again, this is where if you read the patch notes, which are super long, tons of new stuff. It's definitely like warranting. There's definitely warranting like a 1.0 release. I was a little bit worried that they would have enough, and it would be a little undercooked. But it's no, it's pretty promising. But yeah, combat sounds, music has been severely undercooked for quite a while. So I'm really hoping for some real oomph here. But this could be a maybe we're going from like a subpar to like maybe mid, above mid. But I'm looking forward to being proved wrong here, and it just kicks ass because I love good sounds. Visuals as well. Again, very undercooked. If the notion of it looks and feels like a Unity game, you know, those undercooked ones, this is really where it comes through. At least until now. Now, I have seen the new visuals they're showing, and they look good. If they manage to essentially make the whole world feel cohesive and the whole world feel as if it's updated and the lighting is good, and the lighting looks a lot better, the different like tones and all that they're adding, the different weather types looks a lot better. I think they are nailing it on the, we just need to layer the world in like our feel to kind of get the right feel of there. I don't have the lingo to express this, but yeah, visually the game was not stunning before. It had moments of it being really good, but it wasn't cohesive. I'm hoping that it'll become more cohesive with 1.0. Combat as well, like with the combat, with the sound plus the visual feel and kind of the impact and the feeling that the things just kind of feel like paper mache. It feels a little bit like origami, like enemies you're fighting, like they kind of just disappear. You hit them, no real feedback, they die, they kind of just like poof out like systems. No like real like gore of like feel to it. Again, this is where they are addressing this significantly from what I can see in the patch notes and what they're telling us. So I'm hoping for a big update here. So these are both something where 1.0, it's almost impossible to know how it's gonna, like, the full feel of this, how it's gonna be. We'll just have to see it. The thing is, it doesn't really matter if they succeed or not. The game is still worth playing. Like, with everything said so far, with how good the systems are, I gave it some flack, but it's a decent end game. Classes. Now, if there's an S tier in all of this, this is it. Classes. There's skills, there's synergies. Now, you have 4 different classes with 3 different masteries. This is something I discussed with the devs early on in the cycle. Is the idea of having archetypes. Because I think I remember them being like not 100% sure if they should kind of make archetypes for people and all that. But I think they have done that, and I think that's the right choice. You want to have the bow class. You want to have the, like, you don't want to go against the genre too much where you want to be unique to where you forget that sometimes people just want to turn into a bear and slam the ground or throw fireballs out there or, you know, or just have a bow and an arrow, right? And then you have all the uniqueness as well. So you pretty much get everything. You get your bow classes, your melee classes, your tank classes, your sword and board, and your minion classes. You get things that proc everywhere. You get poison, you get crits, you get ailments, you get necrotic and leech, and you get everything. Everything is covered, and everything is fun. It's hard for me to choose a single class or a single mastery that I wouldn't want to play. I am compelled to play all of them. I've pretty much played all of them at this point, and they've all been super fun. The things they lean into very well. Not everything is balanced super well, but everything is compelling to play. That's the classes. The skills themselves is where, like, if the classes were good and they nail, like, their designs, which I do think they do, like, they're all... Yeah, no, I do think they do. Yes, the Sorc feels like a Sorc. The Rogue feels like a Rogue with the different... Yes. The Primalist, with its whole of the elements in the world and the beasts, is very good. And then the Acolyte, with all its summoning of minions, raising the dead, and the... Yeah, it all works. But they're all great. They all have great skills, great synergies. Now, this is the thing. Synergy. If there's anything D2, I think, especially with their expansion, kind of... Like, the one thing I really loved, I remember... It's like, oh, if I take this skill, it synergizes with that other skill. Now, Last Epoch does this, but, like, turn it up to, like, 11, 12, 20 even. And it's like, it's so good. All the different skills, they can trigger each other. They work with each other. It's just really fun. It's really fun, really digging into the skill tree and just being like, okay, so what does this skill do? And how can I really utilize everything it has to offer? Right? You can have your bird. So I'm playing a Falconeer, probably, on launch. And I'll have my bird come down. And when it lands, it also triggers a bunch of umbral blades that lay on the ground. And those, both the Falcon and the umbral blades are 2 skills. And they both have a skill tree. And so you see, when you use the one skill to trigger the other skill, that also has a skill tree. And then sometimes that skill can have a skill tree interacting with another. It gets really fun, interesting. S tier, guys. S tier. This rivals the best ideas out there for class and skill design. Straight up, it's that good. Even though I'm probably going to make a guide for my build, I would say don't use it. You don't need guides. This game, you don't need it. It's a pretty straightforward. Like respecking, I should actually have another note here. Boom. Respecking. It's easy. It's easy. It doesn't, there's not, the resource is your time, basically. So, and the way that works is the resource is your time. You can always despecialize a skill and take a new one. Then you get a certain base level amount of skill points back, and then you have to start re-leveling it. Or you can just remove 1 point, and then you have to re-level that point. But if you took a wrong one, you can remove it and just level it up again. It's easy. Now, there is tension there, and it doesn't because if you're just getting into the end game and you need to remove 5 points, that's a lot of power and leveling it up. And like if you're just like 50 or like if you're just hitting your 20, it takes quite a long time in the beginning. As you get through the end game and the XP ramps up, getting it back to 20 goes really fast. The further you get in, the faster it is to respec. But even at the early stage, it's pretty easy. So just S tier. They have a pretty good loot filter. It's built in. You can just tinker with it in game. It's easy to customize. Pretty logical to follow. It's like a priority tree. Like It's like I don't know the word for it, but yeah, you stack your conditions. And depending on which one is in the top, it takes that first, and it's like, oh, I want to hide these things, I want to highlight those things. It's good. It's a good loot filter. I like it. I think they made a good loot filter, and it's baked into the game. You don't have to go outside the game on like a third-party site. This is also a thing that the game does well. There's even good in-game information of skills and such. So you don't have to go again to a third party. So you can essentially, if you want to play this game, no third-party usage at all, this is like the game for you. And I highly recommend to not get sucked into I must play the best build, but go in, experiment. Go in and look at some skills that you think are like, oh, those are cool, because almost all skills can be played to a high level. It's almost impossible to go wrong here. Go and experiment. The joy of finding a synergy in this game is like, oh, it feels so good. Like, I cannot state how disappointing it is when everything is like solved. Like, I get for some of this launch, which is, here's a small rant in the middle of all this. The way they like essentially give content creators the opportunity to make builds and guides. It's the same thing they did in D4, and it was bad because it informs a community that really thrives on discovery and like tells it, oh no, you shouldn't do that. You should just do this thing that we've decided, like we've pre-planned for you. Like, games like these are all about exploration and like class exploration. I highly encourage you guys, make a build, fail at it. Last Epoch does not punish you that hard for failing at a build. Yes, PoE does that. And I would say in PoE, yeah, okay, you kind of want a pretty decent starter, depending on how much time you have. I do recognize that I have more time than most. But in this game, like, you can keep... I get to the end game sometimes, and I keep respecking my build, like 7, 8, 9 times. And it's fine. Even on my first character, it's fine. Right, UI and quality of life. Okay, quality of life. Pickup range. Oh, I wish they had bigger pickup range. The UI is okay. They're making it better. I think it's possible, but yeah, I think UI before launch, what I can see they're changing looks pretty A tier maybe. It's for the most part like in the B. I would say like it looks like it's gonna get real good with the launch. But, you know, we'll see. It's a fine UI. Quality of life. The way you pick up things and those, it kind of annoys me, but these are things that are not super important. Game works fine. Yeah. Now, oh, there is actually one more thing. Multiplayer. I have something to say about that in the end. Okay, so patch notes. If patch notes are any indication of a good game, then this game is great. So also some banger patch notes this time around. They're generally really good at updating the game and really making the game fun through their balance. So I think good job. I think they really nailed the things they needed to nail for this launch. Most of the things that I really had an issue with are being addressed significantly. Like this, some of this, like the weaker parts, this as well. To where we're really augmenting the things that's gonna like finalize and make the game come together as a whole. But the fact that guys, when I say that this is S tier, this category right here is the most important category in any ARPG, and it's what they nailed. So should you buy this? Yes. Unless you're just an RPG player who wants a good campaign, then it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. That's the caveat. That's the almost certainly. Otherwise, I would just say yes. There is one more caveat. Multiplayer. Their multiplayer launch a year ago was terrible. It was terrible. Now, they have said that their main thing that they've been working on all this time is getting multiplayer right. And they're like, the whole structure around their network. But there are so many players who are going to be playing. So if you're going to go into this game and you think you're going to play with your friends, make sure you have an alternative. This might be a mess when it launches. I'm sure they're going to get it right over time. I'm pretty confident that they're committed to get it right over time. Now, will they get it right straight away? Multiplayer's a hard one. Are we going to have queues? I don't know. Are we going to have corrupted stashes and such? I don't know. I mean, they've had some issues with it before. It's this one is big uncertainty, especially given what they've showed before. I pray for a good launch. I wish them the very best. I want multiplayer to just kick ass. I want the ladders to be amazing. But I am okay if it just falls apart in the first couple days, because there's going to be so many people playing. This game is great, and I'm really looking forward to playing it. These are my thoughts, and I hope you guys are going to have a great launch. Have a good one.